Hello guys. So I was thinking I'd do a video recap of the slides, the presentation that I did for Brighton SEO. I have shared the slides on, I think it's called Speaker Deck, but I don't think they really give enough context, so I thought I'd do a video. So my talk is called Unlocking SEO Wins with Cloudflare Workers with no dev support. But before I get into the juicy part, I just want to set the scene. So the developers are slammed. They're booked up for weeks, maybe even months in advance. But no, you've taken the time, you've crawled the site, you've raised the issues, logged the tickets, and then you refer back to the dev sprints, and they're not picking them up till weeks, months down the line, which isn't really going to be workable. So this isn't a legacy client. This is a brand new client that's been sold an SEO strategy. And here's an example roadmap where the technical work stream are early on. So that leaves us with a bit of a conundrum. So we've raised the tickets with the devs, and it's going to take some time, and it feels like this. So what can we do as SEOs to push these tickets through? Well, a little bit of quick thinking, and we can use Cloudflare Workers. So if you've used Google Tag Manager before to override a canonical tag or override, say, a HTTP status code or something like that, you'd be able to use Cloudflare Workers. I think actually it's probably even easier. So I think most people have heard of Cloudflare, but I don't want to go spending lots of time talking about what Cloudflare is. But this will give you a quick overview. So Cloudflare is basically middleware between your website server and the visitor's browser. So Cloudflare Workers, this is a quick overview of what Cloudflare Workers are. But here's the important part. Cloudflare Workers can allow us to modify and respond to HTTP requests. So what does this mean? Well, it means us as technical SEOs, we can action tech SEO tickets without devs, as long as we've got access to clients' Cloudflare, which they can delegate access to. So I'm going to show you quickly how to create your first Cloudflare worker. So log into Cloudflare. You've probably got it in light mode or dark mode. On the left-hand side, you'll see a menu item called Workers and Pages. So if you click into that, it'll give you a quick overview of workers that you've already set up, but your screen will probably not look like this because you're probably fresh. But what you want to do is click that Create Application button. And then we want to start using a basic template. So Cloudflare have provided a very basic one called Hello World. So if you click that, set a name for your worker. So in this example, I used Brighton SEO. Now, if you look at the box below, worker.js, it's got a very quick JS snippet saying Hello World. Well, what you want to do is, once you've saved, you want to go back and edit code. So here we are back there, and clean that out, like remove those lines of code. So you've got a nice clean sheet. So next, what you want to do, depending on the SEO task at hand, I would say use ChatGTP. So ask ChatGTP to create you a Cloudflare worker script for whatever action you need to take. And then once you've created that, we want to set a route. So route is basically where the Cloudflare worker will trigger across the site. So on this example, it means site-wide, where I've put -Brighton SEO And I've assigned the worker. So that's the worker that we just created then. Click save. So that's a very basic example how to create a worker, but I've got a few examples that I'd like to show you. So first one, super easy one, is override a canonical. So you can do this on a single URL, you can do it on bulk URL, you could do it on a pattern match, for example, filtering navigation if there was no canonical set. But what I've done for this one is a very basic. So on this screen here, you can see the canonical tag is set to my website /BrightonSEO. So I used ChatGTP to create a script, a worker script that looked for the existing canonical and overrided it. So if you can see, I've set it to /BrightonSEO 2025. So I set the route. So I've set the route to the page, or you could call it a subfolder, but it's generally a page. And I've set the worker there, so you can see I've assigned the worker. So what will happen now is that worker will trigger on that URL. So here's an after example. So if you can see the canonical has been overridden now to BrightonSEO 2025. Okay, so I have another example for you, and it's injecting schema. So, I didn't have too much time to cover within the presentation, so I keep it fairly top level on this front. So we create a Cloudflare worker script, and this Cloudflare worker is injecting the event schema into a page. So what I used is the information for my presentation last week. So you can see it's got the event name, start and end. It's got the location there. So this is a visualization of that schema actually triggered on the page. And this is using Ziggy Stroudsburg's structured data plugin. I highly recommend you download that. And here's what the JSON array looks like. So that's an example of injecting schema, but you can inject any schema. You could even create, dynamic schemas for across the pages. Possibilities are limitless. And what I do like, and I'll probably comment this more than once, is if you use Google Tag Manager to inject JavaScript into a page, remember that JavaScript is rendered on the client browser. So you're adding extra weight, extra resources, power, even slowing it down slightly. If you're doing it with Cloudflare, you're doing it on the edge. So what I mean by the edge, it's being rendered server side before it hits your website. Okay, so another example, and I quite like this one. So this is around caching third-party scripts. So you can use Cloudflare Workers to cache a third-party script. Now, the reason you'd maybe want to do this is speed, for example. So this is the full reason why I've done this. So I created a Cloudflare Worker script that caches a CDN library. And there's that CDN library served from my domain. Now, here's a before and after on the page speed. On the speed of fetching the asset. So this is the before. So this is when it's being fetched from the CDN itself. So you can see it's doing the CDN DNS lookup. It's doing the connection and the SSL. And then you're waiting for the response. So that took roughly 200 milliseconds. Now, cached from my site, we got it down to 75 milliseconds. So if you've noticed there, the DNS lookup's not there. The SSL handshake isn't there. Now, why would you want to do this? Okay, so remember I said it's a new client that you've won. Let's say layout shifts, CLS, are in the green zone, and let's say IMP is in the green zone as well. Now, let's say LCP is being pulled down, or specifically it's being pulled down by third-party scripts. So let's say you're only, I don't know, a couple of hundred milliseconds from passing the LCP metric, and that would have you passing Core Web Vitals. So let's say you cached a handful of third-party scripts, and you shaved off, I don't know, half a second LCP time, and it puts you in the green zone. In my opinion, that could go a long way to passing Core Web Vitals, or even pass you for Core Web Vitals. And that's a big win on a new client, especially if they've not passed Core Web Vitals for quite some time. And I commonly see LCP as the worst offending Web Vital, and this is a really simple way to tackle it. Okay, next example. So this next example is meta descriptions. So you might be thinking, oh yeah, it's a nice and easy one, really. But let's say it's an e-commerce new client. That e-commerce client has, I don't know, 50,000 URLs, indexable URLs, for example, across products, categories, etc. And if you was to populate them like individually, manually, you know that would take time. So the next best thing would be you'd bulk generate all those meta descriptions, and you would send the list to the devs. But just remember, the devs are stacked. They're not coming looking at your tickets for a few months. So this example of a Cloud Worker script, what it does is it looks to see if there's a meta description or a populated meta description. If it does find one, it skips the page. If it finds it's missing or it's not populated, what it does is looks for the first paragraph tag on that page, and it extracts the first sentence from that paragraph, clipped at 160 characters, just to meet best practices. You may get some cut-offs, etc. But the win on this is that you're generating meta descriptions on the fly in bulk to finish those 10K URLs off, etc. You might think, okay, this might not necessarily be a big thing for, say, Google, for example, because Google rewrites the meta description all the time. But what about, say, Bing Webmaster Tools, for example? When Bing Master Tools is looking at a site, it flags blank and empty meta descriptions. So, you know, you're ticking another box. Like, it's simple. It's pretty easy to do. So here's the before and after on the meta description side. So there's the before at the top, no meta description. And if you look underneath it, can you see the paragraph tag? Now look at the after example. Can you see the first sentence from that first paragraph tag has been populated as the meta description? And again, this is being done on the edge, super fast, super quick. It'd be quicker than doing it like if you used Google Tag Manager. And here's how that works again. So it checks for existing meta description, extracts the first paragraph if none's detected, and then generates the meta description based on the first 160 characters, and then injects it into the head. Okay, so another example, and some of you may like this. So, you know, if you're working with relatively larger sites, you're probably going to be used to seeing things like this, that there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of URLs that are not being indexed for various reasons. Now, I don't like seeing data like that. And actually what I'm saying, I don't like seeing data like this. I think it pollutes your data in Google Search Console, and it clearly points towards there's potential issue with crawl budget. So another thing you can do with Cloudflare Workers is you can update the robots.txt file. Again, remember, I'm saying that you've not got access to dev support. You may not have access to the admin area of a CMS, or the CMS might not allow you to update robots.txt files on the fly. And I'd say quite a lot of them don't. A couple of bigger ones probably do. I think Shopify, you can override the robots.txt file. Magento, I think you can override the robots.txt file. But how many other CMSs, platforms that you've probably worked on that don't allow you to upload it, maybe with your permission access? Custom, for example. So anyway, so this is a Cloudflare Worker script. And what it's doing is it's injecting directives into the robots.txt file. So what I've done on this is disallowed Googlebot from crawling those faceted and filtered URLs. Now, you know, like this may or not work if you've already got a bit of an issue with crawl budget, but there's another secondary stance we could also take. So let's say you've got access to the crawl log data, or you can even look in the settings, crawl stats in Google Search Console, and see if there's any persistent filtering facet URLs that Googlebot is hitting. And if it is, what we can actually say is set a path and then set user agents. And if a user agent is hitting those paths, we can say to the user agent, serve a 410 status, which says it's gone, don't come back. And obviously, we're still serving a regular 200 status for the regular user agents, the browser user agents. So the user's still seeing the site, still seeing all that faceted filter URLs. But we're saying to Googlebot and some of the other search bots, guys, we don't want you in here. You're spending too much time here, and you're potentially wasting crawl budget. So this is what we're serving to Googlebot. You know, it's default 410 status. So those are the examples that I've given. Now, when I was doing the research for this presentation, I come across dozens, if not hundreds of use cases. Now, I've documented a few of them on my website forum, and I'll be uploading this video to my YouTube channel very shortly. But to give you examples of what you could use it for schemas. So I've given you an example already. So there's dozens of user schemas. You can dynamically populate them. Tracking scripts, you know, if you want to add additional layers of tracking, it could be if you wanted to use like a run script, you know, the likes of debugger, request metrics, run vision, you know, and you've not got access to the devs, you can implement that tracking script that way, or you can use Tag Manager for that one. Internal linking, you know, you could set some regex rules. Internal linking, if such keyword isn't unlinked, link it to target page. You could build a whole database of that. And that's probably useful for bigger sites. You know, smaller sites, I'd probably stick to manual internal linking. There's emerging tools now using Python and AI to build internal linking scripts, but you can use Cloudflare Workers. Data layers. So data layers, do you generally want to, they're quite complex to get over the fence, but actually you could probably deploy a data layer in a fraction of the time using the likes of ChatGTP and a Cloudflare Worker. And then caching. So I've given the example there of caching a third-party script to speed up your site. So what I'd suggest as well, if you was going to use it for caching, set a timeout on the cache. Maybe, I don't know, once every 7 days. So what it does, every 7 days, it goes and gets the most recent updated version of that cached script. So if there's any new functionality added, you know, it's picking that up fairly quickly. meta robots, override meta robots, dropping no index, no follow, anything basically. You can do them on individual URLs, you can do them on subfolder URLs, regex match URLs, whatever you need to. And when I did do the research for this presentation, I put them in a sheet, and there was dozens of use cases, and it got me quite excited. But this there are some pitfalls that are worth mentioning. In fact, there's one main one worth mentioning, and it is the workers request limits. So I was given permission by one of our clients to deploy worker scripts across the site. So run a pro account. So I thought, okay, pro account, plenty of worker resources. But with Cloudflare, you do get a daily limit, and you do get warned about your daily limit. So this was from a client's website. They got an email towards the end of the day saying, you're about to hit your daily worker limit. So at first I thought, okay. But then when it hit that limit, it pulled the site down. The whole site was serving 500 errors. So this started happening about 8-9 p.m. It was right between 8 and 9 p.m. And I wasn't sure what was going on at the time. I wasn't sure if it was Cloudflare Workers. So panic was starting to set in. And it did transpire that I did hit the resource limit for Cloudflare Workers. So I got a bit giddy on the site. I was using lots of Cloudflare Workers. I was using every URL, so it just quickly got used up. Now, I went on Cloudflare Workers support forums to see if there was any support, and it wasn't just me that have hit this issue. It does seem that if you hit your request limit for the day, it pulls your site down. So that's one to be aware of. Now, again, when I first started using Cloudflare Workers, I thought there was going to be absolutely loads of room to grow. But if you've got a reasonable traffic site, for example, 500,000 page views per month, and if you did 5 workers per page view, and the execution rate, which means they worked, ran on every request, that's 2.5 million workers per month. And the free plan has 100K per day. Pay plans more, and you can also pay for extra workers by themselves. I think start from about $5. So if you're on a small site, make sure you've got capacity to grow with Cloudflare Workers. If you're on a paid plan, just do the math. How many workers are you going to be triggering? So this takes me into some best practices. So avoid unnecessarily Cloudflare executions. And what I mean by this is not every HTTP worker needs, and not every HTTP request needs a worker assigned to it. And you don't need them running on non-HTML assets unless you're targeting something. So what I mean by that is you don't need to trigger a worker on an image. You don't need to trigger a worker on JS files, CSS files, PDFs, JSON files. So just keep them focused on your key focused SEO task, and that will preserve a lot of your workers. Now, this one goes without saying, test. Now, I would prefer everyone to test in staging if you're taking some advice away from this. So if you've got access to the staging site, you can test and deploy Cloudflare Workers without worry. But if you've not got access to a staging site or Cloudflare's not synced with a staging site, what I do recommend is that you create a handful of URLs on the site. Make sure they're hidden from navigation, hidden from view from users. So, for example, your first Cloudflare worker for those test ones could be trigger a new index, meta robots, so it doesn't get picked up on that front. You could even, as well, override your XML sitemap with a Cloudflare worker to take those URLs out as well. So it's not being picked up by users, and you're not saying to Google or over any search engines, come and, hey, look, this URL's on this XML sitemap, please come and index it. And I suggest monitoring the responses carefully. So what I mean by that is check the headers, status codes, the timings as well. So what I mean by timings, so everything's done on the edge, but if you're creating a really intense like Cloudflare worker and it's using KV storage for referencing, say, I don't know, some sort of database or some sort of large spreadsheet, the bigger that is, obviously there's that lookup time, so it could slow down a page. So I'm getting to the end of the presentation now, and the key takeaways that I want to give for you guys are, so remember at the top I said dev resource is blocked for weeks, maybe months in advance. And I also mentioned that we've done the audits and we've logged the tickets with the developers. So the developers will get round to those tickets closer to the time. So what I suggest as well is that you keep check of the sprints. So, or ask an account manager to keep check for you. So when those SEO sprints are coming up, I'd suggest pausing the Cloudflare workers that you created. The reason I say that is the devs are going to put long-term, when they do their tickets, they'll be more long-term, more robust than using a Cloudflare worker. So these are just quick unblockers. So hopefully that helps you. And this is an important one, is like, bear in mind, us as SEOs, we're not developers. Some of us have developer mindset, experience in coding. I know a little PHP, JS, HTML, etc. But I'm not a full dev. And if I was to write these Cloudflare worker scripts from scratch, they could take hours. They could take time to and fro in testing, getting it right. So I use ChatGTP to create the worker scripts. And I recommend as well, in the prompts, you always put in, it's a Cloudflare worker script. Because I did notice when I was messing around initially with Cloudflare worker scripts, if I didn't prompt it was a Cloudflare worker script, the results varied. Don't ask me how, I'm not sure. So yeah, I certainly recommend using ChatGTP or your favorite AI tool. And lastly, I know we get frustrated at devs when we've not got resource or support, or it's going to take some time, but they're in the same boat as us. You're all on the same team. It's just that they're busy. So yeah, take the time to get to know the devs and even tell them that you've been using Cloudflare worker scripts to implement some of the tech tickets. It might even nudge them to bring forward some of your tickets. And if it does, that's a win. And thank you. This was my Brighton SEO 2025 presentation on using Cloudflare workers to unlock SEO wins with no dev support. My name's Chris Lever. You can find me on LinkedIn. My website is chrisleverseo.com. or just Google Chris Lever SEO. And the agency I work for is a performance marketing agency based in Manchester called Bring Digital. Thank you and goodbye.